gas canisters fired into this crowd in Venezuela, reaction to the country's opposition leader Juan Guaido calling for a military uprising. People taking to the streets there for what's being called the final phase in a months-long mission to oust socialist leader Nicolas Maduro. Guaido saying today it has been years of sacrifice, persecution, and even years of fear. Today, that fear ends. Guaido, who's been recognized by the U.S. and more than 50 other nations as Venezuela's leader, responding to the ongoing unrest, as well as the humanitarian and economic crisis there.
Alrighty, y'all, welcome back to The Flip Side. What you were just watching was the current crisis in Venezuela. As you can see, the turmoil is spanning across the country, and it's going to be including many other foreign actors, the U.S. included. So we're going to have to really get into that, man. I'm Brian Hesson.
And I'm your co-host. Brian is the sponsor of The Flip Side. He really created this idea just to bring about an environment where two different sides of an ideology can talk to one another. Right. Brian represents usually a left side. I know you try to consider yourself more. I just consider you as a liberal.
Okay. But I'll take that.
But Brian convinces his base that he's a liberal, and I kind of represent the conservative side. Right. So every single week, I know it's been a while since we've done this, but we try to take the main topic of the month, something trending on Twitter, and this month, really it's been about Venezuela, what's happening over there with the crisis, and people saw videos of tanks running over citizens, but we have something to show you. Check this out. This is what we're going to be talking about this week on The Flip Side.
It feels good to be back, bro. Let me tell you. Hey, listen. I mean,
it does.
So here's the thing, guys. It's the flip side. Welcome back for our new viewers. This is going to be a sociopolitical podcast.
And our old viewers, yeah.
And our old viewers, welcome back. I appreciate y'all riding with us. This is a podcast, a video, a movement, if you will, that it personifies what exactly is going on in the millennial perspective, but not just the millennial perspective. We say that just because we're millennials, exactly. But it's really essentially the interpretation of the feeling and the emotion of the current political climate in our country.
You know, the deals being made and the decisions being voted upon right now is affecting our generation more than anybody else. Right. So that's what's cool about seeing two people of different sides talking about it more.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
When I was in college, I saw a real dichotomy between the two beliefs rising against each other, and our main thing to do was talk to each other. You get a real sort of healing power almost when you're talking to someone of a different view, and that's what we've been doing. So we haven't made a video in what? I think it's been at least 2 months?
Almost 2 months. Almost 2 months, yeah.
Not too much about where we've been, but within the last couple of weeks, Brian and I have really been talking to sponsors, a couple different radio stations that we're really blessed to have, talking about sponsoring us for upcoming episodes, especially as we go into the 2020 election. You guys are going to see a special video from The Flip Side on June 19th, and it's going to be really about the conversation on reparations. And as the 2020 election gets around, I feel like that's going to be a bigger
we're going to creep it in. We're going to creep it until it's, the big news, the newsworthy thing. But, let's get into it. Y'all just saw a video of the crisis in Venezuela. You saw, protesters in the streets. President Maduro, who's the current president, quote unquote, of Venezuela. And then you have, I'm going to butcher his name, but President Guaido, or interim President Guaido, who is
President Juan Guaido.
Guaido. And essentially, he is the opposition leader. He is the opposition. He is going against the Socialist Party of Venezuela. And it's turning into, y'all, I'll be honest with you, it's turning into a full-blown civil war, to be honest.
Listen to this. It's turning into a civil war. You're right about that. And where we're going to have a debate tonight, hopefully, is on how it's gotten to this situation. You know, how did Venezuela, a country with a booming oil industry, one of the biggest oil reserves in the entire hemisphere, came to this point where people are starving in the streets. I read this statistic earlier today about in Venezuela, there's hospitals without electricity and babies being born into cardboard boxes. Right. So it's interesting seeing how a country about 2 decades ago went from a global superpower into a
failed state.
It's a land where people are just desperate for their liberties back. Right. And the conversation I want to have with you is, I really believe that the reasons Venezuela has gotten to this point where people are starving in the streets, to where people are out of jobs, fleeing the country, is because socialism. And what socialism is a sort of ownership of the government.
It's ownership of production.
It's an ownership of
public,
production.
Public
right?
ownership of production, usually the state, typically.
So here's the thing. Venezuela had a bunch of different private industries where people were very successful off of the oil industry. And they created their own businesses. They developed their own markets for it. Right. And all of a sudden, people like Hugo Chavez, people like the current dictator right now, they seize complete government control of all these different entities. And they mandated other things like public health, and they did all these other all these other systems that they can give out into their public
became
society.
A welfare state.
They become a welfare state, and they assume the ownership of production. Right. Well, and the thing is this: the only discussion I want to have with you on this whole topic is that right now we have candidates in the United States running for president who are democratic socialists. You know, who believe in the policies that are being implemented out in the world and failing right now. So it amazes me. It amazes me that so many of our viewers and so many of our our friends, my friends, are actually, you know, they want to see Bernie run for president.
I don't.
They want to see Bernie become the DNC leader. I don't. Just like they did last
year.
Election.
That's for sure. I don't. Well, but you're right though. Bernie Sanders is the front runner of for the Democrats right now. Even though it's still early, but still. However, this is what people need to understand. I get what you're saying, and I knew exactly what you're going to say about Venezuela.
I mean, we got to relay it back to them.
True.
That's who's really affected. Bringing in United States politics is selfish in a sense, but
it's not. No, it's not. It's not selfish. We live here, so essentially, what we see out in the world, we should either the things that are good we should mirror, and the things that are bad we should avoid. I think that's fair to say. I mean, we're not just a bastion of knowledge just in the United States. There's other people around the world, other countries that have created systems that are better than ours, and so or worse than ours.
I'm not going to agree with you on that point. That system's better than ours.
That's what I'm saying, Skyler. That we can learn from other countries, like Venezuela. We can learn from Venezuela.
How so?
The things that they did in terms of their economy is something that we should avoid. And like I said, Skyler, the unfortunate thing that I see a lot of people, specifically on the conservative side, is that they want to they want to simplify the reason of Venezuelan crisis, the Venezuelan economic failure, of just socialism. And let me just help everybody out in terms of the history of Venezuela. Is that
Are you about to argue for socialism? Or?
I'm about to argue on why Venezuela has failed, and why that socialism did play a part. It didn't start the snowball effect of their economic failure. It didn't start it. It might have helped it. It didn't start it.
Before you begin your speech on this, is Venezuela a socialist country?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to clarify. They are a socialist country.
Right. And Zimbabwe is a capitalist country. So that's what I'm trying to say, Skyler, is that though you're absolutely...
What's that have to do with...
What I'm saying is that if you look at Zimbabwe inflation is crazy. I mean, and they're quote-unquote capitalist. However, this is what I'm saying, Skyler, is that I'm not necessarily stating that socialism is the run-of-the-mill, it's the gold standard of how we operate economies. Honestly, I don't agree. I think that capitalism is still the best form of an economic system that we have today.
Why?
As of right now.
Why?
Because it allows innovation. That's my biggest thing.
Hold on.
Is that it allows innovation.
But do you realize that the own side that you advocate for is the complete opposite of that,
well,
Brian?
No, it's
Hold
not.
on, no, listen to me.
It's not.
Listen to me.
What I'm saying right now is what I believe in.
Current presidential candidates on the Democratic Party, like Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, they're all advocating for free public systems that are going to tax our wealthiest percent on these free systems implemented by the government.
Right.
The government is providing something.
Right.
And what you're seeing is that exactly happening in Venezuela.
No. See, that's what I'm about to.
No,
that's what. Well, Skyler, listen. You didn't let me finish. This is what I'm getting to for the Venezuelan history. So Venezuela, when it got its independence from Spain, was essentially a banana republic. Excuse me. You know, it was just like any other South American country. In that era, it was the early 1900s. You know, they didn't know exactly how to build their economy, their government, and things like that. And then they had dictators up until 1958. In 1958, that's when they went to a democratic, more of a democratic state. However, if you don't understand, Skyler, is that there was a you fixing this shit. Listen, the thing that you don't understand, Skyler, and a lot of other conservatives don't understand, and some people, and this is fine because not everyone looks up Venezuelan history.
Tell us what conservatives don't understand.
You don't understand is that Venezuela has nationalized their petro industries before Hugo Chavez. Even when this is why
they were reliant on oil. What's your point?
No, what I'm saying is that they already nationalized their petro before Hugo Chavez and before they had a socialist party. They were just dictators. They were democracies, but they were essentially dictatorships. But they were going through an economic boom. Why? Is because that was their major export. They specialize. No, listen though.
This is
the problem that they have is that they and like I'm about to go into, socialism did not help, but they specialized in one natural resource. That 80% of their exports and 80% of their revenue was coming from one thing, oil. And what happens if something messes up that market or oil prices fall? Your whole economy is going to collapse. Why? Because you have nothing to fall back on. And here's the thing, Skyler, is that what Hugo Chavez did was, and what his predecessors did, was ignore what their economists in the country was stating, that hyperinflation was happening before Hugo Chavez was in office, but they were ignoring it. Hyperinflation, they were spending too much. They were also taking in too much debt. And then Hugo Chavez didn't help the situation. He took that economic boom that was happening in that country, and what he did was he turned that wealth into social. He did into social programs, but he just created a maelstrom of problems for that country. And then when he deceased and Maduro took office,
Brian,
it collapsed because the economy couldn't hold up. The one thing that was holding up was oil, and if you specialize in just one thing, it's like if the United States specialized in one resource, we would be screwed.
So we can have a debate all day long, honestly, on the philosophical discussion on
that's not philosophical though. That's historical
on why Venezuela is the way it is today.
Right.
But I think one of the reasons you're at least seeing tanks and armored vehicles running over
because he's a dictator,
running over citizens in the streets is because you don't have any right to protect yourself. No. Another very significant thing about socialism and honestly with liberals and progressives today is like the need to control power. And I feel like
the need to control power.
Yeah.
In what
sense? The need
to
control power in the sense that gun ownership is almost a way to protect yourselves beyond all else. You know, in Venezuela, you don't have gun ownership rights. Like you can't protect yourself if the government honestly was taking your rights or your individual liberties, but you get born as a human. Socialism doesn't allow for individual rights. It treats everyone as a
unit,
collective.
as a collective.
As a collective, yeah.
Well, the problem, why that Hugo Chavez was even elected in the first place, is that during those economic booms of the country, there was essentially no middle class. Is that the rich and the very wealthy in that country were hoarding 95% of the wealth in that country, and of course, on paper, Venezuela was looking dope. It was looking dope, but that was the reason why you had such a backing for Hugo Chavez. He failed his first attempt on taking the administration. Then he won the second time. But the reason why, and actually, this kind of want to get into it because this is kind of interesting. I want to get to this last point, then you can get to your point. Yeah. And and this is it has nothing to do with I think socialism is great or I think capitalism is great, but it's kind of interesting, man.
final points on Venezuela and what's happened this entire last week with the government revolting.
So what I think, man, what I believe is that, on paper, or capitalism works majority of the time when there's nothing to corrupt it. I think that all countries should be capitalistic. However, the problem is that sometimes capitalism can be susceptible to greed, of course, and that greed can create a situation where there's no middle class, or there's an exploitation of people, specifically the poor, and that's when you find more socialistic and quote unquote progressive policies come into play. So if you really want to make sure that socialism doesn't exist, you had to fix capitalism first. Because I believe in capitalism before I believe socialism, but you got to understand that if capitalism doesn't work, it's always going to lead to socialism.
All right. My final point on what's happening in Venezuela with the riots that are happening in the streets, people dying, being ran over by armored vehicles in the streets, no hospitals with electricity, is that you Venezuelan people out there are going through the same thing that we went through in 1776. What you're doing, you're fighting for your liberty. You're fighting for your individual rights. Thomas Jefferson said a very famous quote, my favorite thing that I've memorized in Latin, and it's malo per colosum libertatem quimquietem servitutem. I'd rather have dangerous liberty than peaceful servitude. What it's about is taking your individual rights back for yourself. The government right now over in Venezuela, they've taken your rights. Our own friends that we went to high school with, Chris Lofton, actually, who wanted to tune in tonight.
I knew you were going to bring up Chris.
And if Chris is watching, we talked about this, but
Jesus.
They fled. They fled because they were business owners over there.
Right.
And what happened was the government took control of all these different private industries to where they were the main source of power. They were the main source of well-being. And what happened was you completely eliminated the individual and made a country about a government rather than about its people. And that's what you can't do.
And that's the thing, guys. We can always expand. Please let us know at the Flip Side on air across all social media and at gmail.com. Let us know exactly if you want us to expand on this specific issue. I really wanted to get into Russia and we're
about to,
bro. We are, but not about Venezuela because we can kind of get into it.
Yeah, we can.
We can get a little bit into it, but thank you guys. We're not done. We're about to go into intermission, man. Please stay tuned. Another 30 minutes. We're gonna be talking about some dope shit here in a minute. Stay tuned, man. Come on.
too.
Oh,
Good intermission.
Minutes, unfortunately.
You know, it goes by quicker than you think it is.
Too fast.
And
too fast, man.
We do this episode only a month. There's so much that goes on within 1 month in the United States that it's almost Venezuela. Honestly, is like a very foreign concept to a lot of people. If you found that informative at all, let us know what you think. A lot of this show is because we want to hear what other sides think. That's what we all started to do this for. But that was the foreign issue. Now we're going to talk about a domestic issue, pretty much within the United States.
Right.
Brian, what's that going to be?
Well, so we're going to be talking about, Attorney General Bill Barr. And, okay, so I don't know, obviously, if you pay attention to anything in the news or anything in social media.
Or anything on this podcast, because we've talked about the Mueller investigation and what's happening with Russia.
At least twice.
For a couple episodes. Brian and I try to be a little bit proactive about what's happening out in the United States and give our current synopsis of what's happening today. On what's happening in our nation. So it's kind of interesting seeing things like this report happening. But for anyone who has been paying attention to this podcast or just what's happening in the news, you've realized that there's been an investigation into the President of the United States.
Right. It's going on for 2 years.
It was for his
over 2 years.
connections with Russia. Just recently, there was a report done by the investigator for the last 2 years. No collusion was noted. No collusion was charged on. And now there's this big question. After the report's done, after millions of dollars have been spent investigating the President of the United States, they're going to try to go after this phony attempt for obstruction. And for me, it feels like you guys will never, the Democrats will never cease to go after Trump in some aspect just because you guys are politically hungry and can't recognize the great things being happening in the United States right now today. We've had, for the last 36 years, there's never been a higher economy than there is right now in the decade that we're living in.
Our economy is great. Economy is great on paper right now. I say on paper because.
But that's besides. I'm not trying to talk about the economy. It's great. There's no debate about that. What I'm trying to say is, you guys are constantly trying to do anything you can.
First off, chill out. I'm not a dim.
But that's how I talk to you because I want to know. I want to know how.
So you want to know? You want to know? You want to know why I think? So I think that we are living in a very, very dangerous time for U.S. politics and for the people of the United States. Why? Is because we have a portion of our population and a segment of our government that is allowing a foreign state, an enemy state, to infiltrate and disrupt our democracy.
So get this right there. You said that. You said there's a foreign entity trying to intercept into our
enemy
election.
state.
Our enemies, right?
Yeah.
So get this.
Would you agree?
You know what this started with? This whole thing started underneath Obama's administration.
The Steele dossier.
Right?
Is that what you said?
The most incredible thing, and why I think that liberals, and we wanted to talk a little bit about, is the media portraying, Barr in a good sense? We're trying to talk about the report that just got released over Robert Mueller's 2-year investigation. The Attorney General of the United States is someone who oversees the laws in the United States, oversees the Justice Department, oversees how investigations are being conducted, right?
Do you think the Mueller investigation was created on corrupt pretenses then?
Yes, I do.
Why?
So this whole thing that we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 months, Brian, the reason that Trump was investigated was because of a dossier, right? A dossier was created
called the Steele dossier. Google it.
Yeah. So the Democratic Party, more or less, there's opposition research is a thing prevalent in both sides of campaigns, Republican and Democrat. You find out things about your opponent, and not that you extorted against them, but at the same time, what this dossier was that started this whole investigation into Trump was something created by the Democratic National Committee, right? So the DNC creates a document that was more or less forgery. They presented it to courts in the United States for...
It was a legal document. It wasn't forgery. And it was funny about the Steele dossier is that it proved it correct, that the House and Senate Intelligence Committee and all of our intelligence communities all unanimously agree that Russia interfered in our elections. Is that true? Yes, it is. Skyler. It is. Russia has interfered. Let's say it loud and proud. Russia has Putin, Trump's best friend, interfered in our elections. And yet, we can't sit back and say, maybe we should stop that administration from doing it again in 2020. Yes, Trump threw a little sanctions there. He kind of like threw that little sanctions in. Didn't do shit. We all know it didn't do anything. And yet, he still has not done anything about, honestly, an act of war. It's going against the democracy of the United States and the sovereignty of the United States. And I can't believe that you are for a man that is going against. He's basically, bro. Let's be honest. He's basically what's that movie? The
National Treasure?
No, no. The Mandarin candidate or the
Manchurian candidate.
The Manchurian candidate, dude. He is, come on, he is, man. Except it's Russian. He's the Russian. I don't want to. Dude, here's the thing, and you know what? I think Donald Trump is too stupid to actually understand that what's going on. I think that Putin understands.
He's too stupid, right?
Yes, Putin knows how to get to people like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a narcissist. He's egotistical. Very, very easy to make this person do what you want by just.
Says who? You're talking so much out
Skyler,
of what credibility?
Skyler, just think about Donald Trump and his behavior on Twitter, just behavior in the past decade. He's a narcissist. It's very easy to manipulate people like that because all you have to do is stroke his ego. That's it. That's it. That is it, Skyler. And guess what? He's complicit, either consciously or unconsciously, to Russia and the Russian state to interfering in our elections and in our sovereignty as Americans. It is what it is.
If the Russians were interfering with our elections,
they are. That's not even it's a fact.
Then it started underneath Obama's administration. Why didn't Obama do anything about it?
Here's the thing, Skyler.
He didn't know.
The complexity. Here's the thing, Skyler. He probably didn't. What was he going to do about it? And in fact, he threw on some of the heaviest sanctions on Russia than Trump did. So he did do something about it. What do you mean?
There's going to be something coming out within the next 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month at tops, and it's going to be the Horowitz Report.
What is that?
Horowitz is the last name of the Inspector General of the United States. He's sort of, if you think about the IRS and how they study taxes and they study everything going on in the United States within the, taxing realm. The Inspector General of the United States oversees the Justice Department, how ethics are carried out. He's pretty much an all-overseeing eye over the Justice Department, for lack of a better phrase. Right. And he's going to be looking into how this Russia investigation started. And a lot of the reason I think Democrats right now are so quick to discredit Barr and make the entire Trump administration look false and idiotic and, as Brian said, stupid or just dumb, it was because they're trying to discredit something before a bombshell drops. I think
what is that bombshell?
I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, maybe in June, hopefully for my birthday, it would be a good birthday present. But I think a report from Horowitz, the Inspector General of the United States, is going to talk about just how this investigation into Trump, a private individual, United States citizen, a campaigning office for presidency, was discredited and investigated against a current sitting office of the United States government. I think there's going to be indictments happening. I think there's going to be criminal charges pressed for the way that State Departments conducted themselves and how they related this investigation into Donald Trump.
What would you want
just because they hated him.
Well, guess what?
Just because they did not want
our intelligence community to do when they understood that there was an interference in our election. What do you want them to do? Well, what would you if you were the director of the FBI, what would you do? If you knew that Russia was trying to sway our elections in favor of a candidate, what would you do? You would investigate them, Skyler.
Here's the thing. When you're sending operatives of the United States into these different campaigns and acting as an agent, trying to catch somebody in a trap, trying to catch somebody in a mousetrap, getting them to say something, recording things, when they're off the record, when they're going as an aide to the president, trying to overthrow him, trying to catch him, there's a complete different type of it's so outside of the United States government to be doing something like investigating a campaign to its fulfillment
They
that it
did
was
to
in this
Nixon.
campaign, especially when the dossier that gave them the power to. First of all, you can't even spy on someone without the rights to. You can't go into a campaign without some type of saying that you can, right? So what happened was the Democratic Party created a dossier, a fake document.
It's not fake because it proved it correct.
They created a document that allowed FISA courts that can investigate into the elections that happened in the United States, spying on Donald Trump. And
so why did
it was created off of a fake dossier. It was created off of something that was fake.
In the report, in the Mueller report, it explicitly states that there was a rigging and a interference from a foreign state in Florida voting booths.
Have you read the full report?
He said it, and
have you read the full report?
And the senator, what's his name? Senator, what's his name? Oh my God, the senator from Florida that ran against Donald Trump.
Have you read the full report?
Oh, no, what was his name? I don't know. But anyways, essentially what they're saying is that the Mueller was like, hey, FBI in Florida, guess what? I think that there is a interference in your voting booths, and I think that they're rigging votes. That's in the report. That's in the report, Skyler. It's explicit. You can read it. You guys, it's a bestseller now, by the way. I bought it. Read it. It explicitly states that Russia interfered in Florida. And let's be honest. That's not an isolated event. That's not an isolated situation. I assume, you can all assume, since it's unanimously understood in the intelligence community that Russia interfered in our election, that happened possibly in other states. So what? What, Skyler?
I feel like no matter what I say.
Go ahead. No, say it, though. Say it. Go ahead.
I feel like no matter what I say, you're always going to have some excuse.
Excuse or fact?
Some type of apology, some type of reasoning for why over and over again you cannot admit that, for one, Donald Trump is a great president, and two, leftists have abandoned people in the United States.
Skyler,
it doesn't matter what happened, bro.
Skyler, stop. Come on, bro. Think about it. I want to kind of get into obstruction, because this is what we need to really be talking about. So I looked up the definition of obstruction. What does obstruction mean, essentially? A thing that impedes or prevents passage or progress, an obstacle or blockage. Can you agree with that definition?
Yeah.
All right. So when Donald Trump told Don McGahn, to go fire Robert Mueller and his special counsel, is that or is that not impeding or preventing passage or progress into the investigation of the Trump 2016 election investigation?
Okay, so Brian, you're trying to be very wordy and very clever, but it's very redundant. And
it's not redundant. It's not redundant.
Many times. So here's the thing. Trump is not ever going to be convicted of a crime that he didn't do.
He's president, of course not.
Here's the thing.
By law, he can't.
You can't be indicted as a sitting president.
Exactly.
So you're right. But here's the thing. When you're talking about what Trump has done.
Obstructed justice? Yeah.
He hasn't. Just because you want to fire somebody and do not do it, and your advisors tell you against it,
he didn't
not obstructive justice.
He told somebody. So he was on the White House special. He was the White House counsel to Donald Trump. He told one of his council members, essentially, to go fire special counsel Robert Mueller of the 2016 investigation. He told him to fire him. And you know what Don said? He said no. McGahn said no. Why? Because he understood that would be political suicide for Donald Trump. Would it or would it not?
If I had somebody committing false claims against me, I would have done the same thing Donald would have done.
But it's illegal.
Fired the guy in front of this who should be seeing over it. Because when you have texts,
but that would be illegal because he's obstructing a legal investigation.
Brian,
that's against the law, Skyler.
No,
you can't do that. He is. That's a legal investigation, Skyler, and he's obstructing the law. That's unlawful, aka illegal. So, what are you saying? What are you saying? I just don't know. I don't get it because it shows in the full Mueller report, still a redacted Mueller report, that he obstructed justice. And there's 448 pages of clear-cut evidence that he did. And don't get me wrong. Here's the thing, Skyler. Yes, he obstructed justice. We all know that. I get it. And he's gonna get away with that because Republicans are going to defend him because they need to defend their power at the end of the day. I get that. But Skyler, that's not even the problem. The problem is that we have a foreign enemy of the United States interfering and trying to destroy our democracy, and we have a current president that's doing nothing. That's the problem. That you have an enemy of the states trying to destroy our democracy, and you don't want to do anything about it. That's the problem, Skyler. But hey, apparently I don't know what the fuck I'm talking
about. Wow, you summed it up great there at the end. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. But, you know, we're about to run out of time, man.
Here's my final statement.
Give your final statement. Right, you have about 5 minutes.
I'm not going to take 5 minutes.
Go ahead. Okay, fine.
So we talked about a lot today, right? We talked about briefly Venezuela. Now we're talking about Attorney General Barr and the wrap-up of the Mueller investigation, which was into Russia.
Right.
Okay? So I think that the Russian investigation happened just because, for one, the DNC created a dossier that was fake. They presented it to the courts. They lied to the courts of the United States government to grant them warrants to spy on Trump's campaign. You had a political party completely overreaching way more than Russia did. Russia actually contacted Trump and asked him if they would like assistance, and Trump's campaign had zero.
And Donald Trump Jr. said that would be great. That's what I'm saying, Skyler.
Russia reached out to Trump's campaign, offered them what they could, offered them advantages, offered them emails, which the DNC had deleted after Hillary was subpoenaed, and deleted her emails and bleached her emails. They offered Trump's campaign a lot of different things to beat Hillary. I would want to beat Hillary too. I don't blame the Russians. I don't blame Putin for not wanting to have Hillary Clinton, the war hawk, in office. You know, but what happened was Trump's campaign did not collude. They did not accept anything from the Russians. They didn't accept anything whatsoever. Out of every single investigation that's happened, every single indictment that's happened from this campaign, there has not been one single indictment for collusion. Trump's campaign was not found guilty of collusion, which is what this whole dossier said that he was guilty of. So now Democrats are asking for his taxes. Now Democrats are saying, oh, there was obstruction. They're saying there's all these different things and a crime that he did not commit, something that was forged by the Democrats themselves, and they're trying to hang him on it, and it's ridiculous. Meanwhile, we have the best type of economy that has ever happened within the last 36 years. We have blacks employed more so than ever they have been before.
You said it like a white person. And black people, bro.
Black people, white people, Hispanics. We've had the most successful rebound in employment and productivity that we've had in the United States in 36 years. And all for some reason Democrats can do is talk about is some crime that Trump did not commit that they forged themselves.
And I want to get
it's just something that I'll say it right here. It's just another tactic for Democrats to disregard General Barr and disregard the report that's going to come out in about 2 months or so about the investigation. The Attorney General wants to investigate, okay, who was looking into Trump? Okay,
the
why?
FBI
okay,
and the intelligence community.
Who granted him the access? And when General Horowitz, the Inspector General of the United States, looks into this, he's going to find a lot of crime. He's going to find collusion, but he's not going to find it in Trump's campaign. He's going to find it in the DNC. I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm done. I am absolutely over this, bro.
Skyler, what you do? God, Skyler, Jesus Christ, bro.
Goodness.
Going back to your point that Russia was trying to get an advantage, trying to help the Trump campaign in 2016. Paul Manafort, campaign manager, higher up in the 2016 Trump campaign, was giving them voter records and voter statistics into our own democracy. Paul Manafort, by the way, who was a pro-Ukrainian Viktor Yanukovych, who was a president who's now not the president of Ukraine, who got ousted, who was pro-Russian, that he worked under, giving voting records of an American election to the Russian state. That's not hypothetical. That's not theoretical. That's a fact, Skyler. Why do you have somebody in the Trump campaign giving statistics and information about our election to a foreign state? Not just a foreign state. This wasn't the UK. This wasn't Canada. This wasn't Lithuania. This was Russia. A Vladimir Putin who is, I'll be honest with you guys, who wants to see the collapse of the United States. He does. Let's be honest. He does. Come on, Skyler. He was part of the KGB during the USSR, and he has disdain against the United States because we beat them in the Cold War. That's the same Vladimir Putin that's the president of Russia today. And you're telling me that he has our interests that parallels with the interests of the Russians.
Bro, what
are you saying?
Our interests don't pair with the Russians. One, because we support Juan Guaido, where as the Russians, the United States supports the interim president of Venezuela over the current dictator.
Of course,
the Russians they support the dictator.
Right.
That's how we don't agree with the Russians.
Right. You're absolutely right.
We've had battles in the Middle East with mercenaries between Russia and the United States.
You're right.
And we are adversaries.
You're right. But why are we giving them information? Right. Why were you giving them information about our election in 2016? Why, Skyler? You have no idea. Conservatives have no idea. People have no idea. Why? Because we want to believe that we are safe. And we are, in a sense. But people don't understand that we have an enemy at the doorstep that we don't want to do anything about.
The Democratic Party.
Oh, no. The Republican Party, Skyler. That hat on your head that says, Trump, make America great again. The Make America Great Again should say, make America Russia again. Or Russia, because it's never been Russian.
It's not my fault that you.
But apparently you want it to be.
Any pride for the United States.
I do have pride. That's the point. That's why I'm so upset. I'm a patriot. I'm a real patriot. I don't want Russia dictating our elections. Sorry. That's if that makes me unpatriotic, then the fabric of America has deteriorated to the point where we're not American anymore. We're just a puppet. We're just a capitalistic state that believes that we're free when we're actually not. If that's what you want to believe in, Skyler. I don't. But at the end of the day, that's it. That's the flip side. That's what we talk about every single week. I know we've been slacking on it. A lot of things have come up. We're going to try to be more consistent with you guys.
Good things have come up.
Great things have come up.
We've been doing podcasts. We've been doing different episodes with a couple of different producers, news agencies, TV stations, and it's been honestly a lot of fun. But honestly, I miss doing this live. Doing this live is kind of fun. It gives you on your cuff. You don't always get to the script. Like,
no, we try. Honestly, listen,
we do try to stick to a topic.
Is the camera on here? Is the camera on here, Kat? Yeah, go ahead. This is a script that we have that we write up every single week.
We try to stick to a script, but it's
and we never do. We never do. But it's fine because you know what? I love the fluidity of our conversation and the fluidity that allows us to really. Word. It's not. Maybe for you. Maybe for Trump supporters. Anyways, guys, I appreciate it. My name is Brian Hesson. I'm with my co-host Skyler Roundtree. My social media, if you will, is O'Neil Hesson 12. Oneil Hesson Hesson 12. My favorite number. That's my social media on all of them, all platforms.
If you want to find a better social media, someone with more followers, mine is Skyler Roundtree. If you can't spell that, just don't even follow me.
You're probably a Trump supporter, so you should probably help yourself.
We're the flip side. We talk every single week about what's happening in the United States.
Yes.
We try to give a different perspective on it.
Yes.
Brian, today I think we got somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
it's up to y'all to finish
it. I don't think we agreed on a lot, but I'm glad that we got to talk about what is happening.
Do you know what I agree on?
So much happening around us.
I agree on that we both care about the future of this country. Can I agree on that?
You can agree.
That's it, baby. It's the flip side, y'all. You know, I mean, I don't know, man. Just.
It's gonna keep going.
YouTube Live, Facebook Live. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Check us out.
TikTok.
Are we on TikTok? No, we're not. Shut the. Listen, guys, I appreciate it. My name is Brian.
Skyler.
Catch you on the flip side.